Welcome back to episode 6 of the Colossal Color Showdown. In this episode, we're going to start taking a look at Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey traditionally is a dark blue-grey color, and it gets used often as a mixer instead of a black because it has more characteristic. The color name, the Payne's Grey, is named after a watercolor artist in the 18th century called William Payne. So in this episode we have 11 Payne's Grey. We have 11 Payne's Greys to look at in this episode. We have the usual brands here, and then we have a student grade one, which is the Van Gogh's Payne's Grey. First impression is that two colors stand out as being a little bit different from the rest. One is the Daniel Smith one, which I have to say was really hard to re-wet. And I don't know if it's because it was hard to re-wet, even though I tried to get the same mass tone out of all the brands, or it's just a naturally a lighter paint. I don't know. But I can definitely notice that this isn't as dark as the rest. The other thing that I can immediately notice is the Schmincke's Payne's Grey. I wondered why Schmincke went out of their way to call it Schmincke's Payne's Grey rather than just Payne's Grey. And I can kind of understand now why they did that. I think they created a color that is very close to neutral. It's what I would expect from a neutral tint rather than from Payne's Grey. And I think by having the word Schmincke's Payne's Grey, they were trying to say it's a little bit different from a normal Payne's Grey that you would expect. And so if you are looking for a traditional Payne's Grey color, you will be disappointed if you try Schmincke's Payne's Grey because it's not a blue-grey color. It is definitely a very neutralized black color. Another thing that isn't so obvious on a wash color chart is the Da Vinci's Payne's Grey. You notice it more when you're putting down the color, and you will also see it in the next episode when I show you the gradated washes. You'll see that it has a tinge of green to it. Definitely a greenness too, but it is noticeable that with Da Vinci, they're the only ones that didn't use either an ultramarine blue or a phthalo blue as their main blue mix. They actually used PB27, which is a Prussian blue. So I wonder if that has brought in an aspect that looks slightly different from all the others. But you'll see how greenish it looks in a wash in the next episode. The most blue color out of all this blue-grey color, I would say, is the Winsor & Newton one. Especially when you're putting down the paint, you notice that it's a lot more blue than the others. Once it dries, it's not so bad, but however, if you look at the values, how dark these colors get, the Winsor & Newton one is still on the light side of all the different ranges. So if you are looking for a traditional, very dark Payne's Grey, I would definitely avoid from looking at the washes. Daniel Smith's one because it's too pale, Schmincke's one because it's too black rather than blue-grey, and I would probably avoid Winsor & Newton one just because it doesn't have as much of a depth and darkness to the colors as other brands have. In terms of re-wet, I already mentioned that the Daniel Smith one was hard to re-wet. Sennelier throughout this series have been a little bit of a problem for me because of the honey that's in there. I find that it re-wets too easily. I did not find that in their Payne's Grey. Sennelier's Payne's Grey re-wetted perfectly as far as from my point of view of someone who normally uses paints that don't include so much honey in the mix. However, if you are used to using honey-based paints, you might find that their Payne's Grey is a little bit harder to re-wet than their other colours. In comparison, M. Graham, which also does have honey, has been great for me personally in terms of re-wet. It re-wets just the right amount for me, and it was never too easy to re-wet. However, in this color, I found that it actually behaved more like the Senneliers have been behaving so far, in that it was just too easy to re-wet. So similar to Sennelier, if you are used to M. Graham and then you try their Payne's Grey, you might find that it re-wets too easily, and you're just going to need to pay a little bit more care in re-wetting the colours. Let's have a look at the prices of these colours. Here is the information sheet. Not very surprisingly, it's the usual story in that Jackson's Art's Payne's Grey is the cheapest and the Coarse one is the most expensive. Coarse one is actually an eye-watering 4 times as expensive per milliliter than the Jackson's one. That is based on UK prices rather than US prices. If you want to find out how these prices stack up in the States, a very kind person has offered to research the prices of all the brands that I cover in each episode over on my Patreon, so do check out that post. Van Gogh, what is the student brand one that we have in comparison, and that is 29 pence per milliliter. So actually Jackson's one is still the cheapest brand if you are looking to save some money. And we'll see in this episode whether Core is really worth paying 4 times as much as a Jackson's one, because I suspect no Payne is 4 times as great as another artist quality brand. What's been really interesting in creating this info sheet was to have a look at how varied each brand classified the opacity of their Payne's Grey. That's the square. And some brands have actually labeled it as transparent, and we have semi-transparent, and then semi-opaques, and then fully opaque color here. So let's have a look at the transparency. This is the result of the transparency, and the first thing I notice is that Sennelier's one has a lot of white deposit on there, which I'm not quite sure why, because Sennelier's paints do not have a white pigment. It's PB19, which is like Queen Magenta and Queen Roses, PB15, which is Sailor Blue red shade, and then PBK7 is a carbon black that is mixed with lamp black. Most of these colors have either 2 or 3 pigments because it's a blend of blue, black, and sometimes a violet or a red. But there is definitely like a bluish white deposit that is very noticeable if you paint it on a dark background. And to further concrete the myth, the legend, and the theory that Jackson's and Cass Arts are made with the same paint as Sennelier, you notice a lot of the same white deposits on the Jackson's one and the Cass Arts one as well. There is also some of the white kind of greyish hue on the Van Gogh's one, which I'm not as surprised because student quality paints are known to have a lot of fillers, but it's definitely less than these 3. So if you do a lot of work on dark backgrounds or even on black paper, then I highly recommend that you don't use these colors. Other brands that I can see some deposits, but not as bad as the Sennelier, Jackson's and Cass Arts one, is Da Vinci. I see a little bit here and a little bit on the edge. Schmincke's one, which generally has this grey hue to it, and also a little bit, only a tiny bit, on the Winsor & Newton one. The ones that I don't really see any deposits happening are the M. Graham's one, the Core's one, Daniel Smith's one, and Holbein's one. So if you are bothered by this white hue shadow thing that's happening on these paints, then I recommend you go for Daniel Smith, Holbein, Core, or M. Graham. Now let's take a look at lift and glazing. And I have to say, with the Payne's Greys, they all lifted about the same amount. I would say they are quite staining. You're never going to get the paper back to white. In terms of glazing, it can get a little bit patchy. The Daniel Smith one definitely got patchy. The Holbein one got a little bit patchy. The Schmincke's one and Winsor & Newton one is noticeably patchy. and a little bit on the Van Gogh. The ones that did really well are the Quartz one, M. Graham's one, Da Vinci's one, and the Jackson's one, and Cassart's one. You can really see the layers, particularly brands like Da Vinci one. It behaves really well in doing glazes. So that's it for episode 6. In the next episode, I'm going to show you how this one, although it's done well so far in this test, that it's a little bit on the green side, and how the different hues are really going to interfere with your color mixes, as well as the gradated washes and the salt test. So do look out for that next week. If you got the bug for comparing colors from different brands by watching this series, then you're in luck, because I am making dot cards that follow this series. This month is the second color in the series, which is a phthalo turquoise. You get to try Daniel Smith, Holbein, Sennelier, Schmincke, Winsor Newton, Core, M. Graham and Da Vinci. So if you want to play around with these paints to find your own favorite phthalo turquoise, then do sign up over on my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Oto Kano. I also put up on my Patreons high-risk scans of all the test sheets that I used in this video as well. If you are interested in getting to compare Payne's Grey that we covered in this episode, that will be in April. Do you use Payne's Grey a lot in your painting? And if so, what is your favorite brand? And has seeing this kind of started to change your mind on maybe trying another brand? If so, do let me know in the comments below. As for me, right now, in terms of the way it behaves while you paint, I'm really liking Da Vinci, but I know, because I've already done the test sheets for the next episode, that the color, the greenish hue, is really going to play up. So I'm going to keep an open mind about which color I'm going to pick as my favorite. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, do give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye!